Hello, Internet, and welcome to another Wednesday's serial. This is pretty special for me. I got my holy grail. Tales of TMNT number 70. This was the final Mirage issue of the Ninja Turtles. What's telling is if you look on the back, they just print a bigger version of the cover. They had no sense to advertise for this. This was printed kind of as a promise, and they paid the creators, but there's no real idea of making money on it. They had a pinup page, the back, and this was it. This was right before they sold off to Viacom, and that was the deal. When this came out, there was a very limited print run. I remember it. You'd have to buy it off the Ninja Turtles website, and getting a print was like $10 for a copy, despite it saying $3.25 on the cover. And you could buy a PDF. That was the way most people are getting at that point, because they were playing with the whole digital idea, and that was going through Volume 4 of Turtles and the concurrent running Tales of TMNT. And I didn't want to at the time. I didn't think of it. I also wasn't collecting it. And now I have it, and it cost a lot more. My girlfriend was incredibly nice and got it for me. She refuses to tell me how much she spent. I've seen it online only a handful of times, and it usually ran around $120, which is a hell of a lot in my mind for a single issue. But I will say this. This is one of the hardest comics to track down. Some people have run with me, and it's hard to find. If you're looking for some like big key issues of like an old Marvel or DC, you can usually at least find those issues. You just probably won't find them at the price you're willing to spend. Like if you're looking for an Amazing Spider-Man #1, say, not even Amazing Fantasy 15, I don't know. Like, you can find them and buy them online. It's just going to cost as much as a car or something. It's ridiculous, but this isn't there, but this is also not something you can just readily find. This is the rarest Ninja Turtles comic. I'm sure it's hard and more expensive to find a first print of the first issue, but if you're just looking to read the first issue, you can go anywhere and read it for free. Like, it's comic book history, it's out there. If you're looking for almost any issue of the original run, like, as long as you don't care about it being a first print, you can find it. This, there is only the first print. It's not been reprinted in trade. It is not digitally available. It is not available through illegal channels either. You cannot find this comic unless you pony up. So I was very excited to get the chance to sit down and read it. But before I get to what's actually in the comic, and I'm going to spoil the hell out of it, because, A, it came out in 2010. You had your chance, right? But you're never going to see it. So, yeah. But what kind of hit me was the foreword by Jim Lawson. Now, the Tales of TMNT and a good chunk of Ninja Turtles comics from the Mirage era were done by Jim Lawson, Eric Talbot, and they weren't the original creators, but they were definitely principal creators when you're talking about Ninja Turtles and the lore. And in here, Lawson's talking about how this has been so much for him. I mean, he was brought into the Turtles thing when they were on issue 3. He's been there since the beginning, before it was as big. And this is where his career was. This is what he was doing. And in it, for him, I mean, this wasn't just a final issue of something that he loved and having to move on. For him, this is essentially the end of his career in comics. I went and I looked it up. He does some commission work where he can. I'm sure he attends some conventions and all that. But he hasn't really done any comic since. He's done a couple Kickstarters for children's comics or children's stories. I don't know what it is. You can definitely tell they have a weird Ninja Turtle looking like character, but definitely not a Ninja Turtle. And it's a lot of dinosaurs. He had a lot of love of dinosaurs. And the other stuff he did was Paleo and Planet Racers, which is something I'm sitting around that I've been meaning to get to forever, and now I have a bit more motivation. Eric Talbot may have not had that much tenure, but he definitely worked on all sorts of different Turtles thing, and this era with the Tales of TMNT is when he really took a shine. And this issue is interesting for all of that. In a lot of ways, it's more interesting as an artifact than as a comic. But the comic's interesting too. So, our issue doesn't actually take place at the end of continuity of Tales, which gets different. And also leads into a bunch of continuity that's now dead. Turtles continuity's died like 3 times over, so... spoilers, but no spoilers. This takes place in between the chapters of Return to New York, which, if you're unfamiliar, is fairly early in Turtles lore. Like, there's the original issue, and then they have some spacefaring stuff and crazy, issue adventures. And then they have another fight with Shredder. They go out to Northampton, then after Northampton, they return to New York. It's kind of a big deal, and it kind of was the beginning of the end of the initial era of Turtles. And in this, Raphael's pretty much on his own after fighting with Leonardo, the classic Ninja Turtles story, and gets caught by a Triceraton, and this Foot Clan member and him kind of have this weird back and forth. And I hate to say it, the dialogue's a little wooden. It feels like the part of the comic where you can see the creators, like, senioritis, if you will, kind of kicking in, but it gets better after that. But they have this back and forth, and Raphael's hanging from a chain, the foot soldiers chained against the wall, or tied against the wall with rope, and so Raphael's able to get basically a giant spear and swing it into the wall so the foot soldier can cut his ropes, and then the idea is the foot soldier is going to free him. There's kind of a moment of that, can I trust you, because foot soldier, but no other choice, right? So Raphael goes for it, frees the foot soldier, then the foot soldier starts trying to shish kebab him, and of course Ninja Turtle, boom, takes him out, gets out of the chains, and this Triceraton they've been building up to this is nuts! So Raphael puts on the skeleton head of his old commander that this guy's been talking to and going with, and essentially leads the crazy Triceraton to believe that he's his old commander who's taken over a new form. In this weird way, like having the skeleton on his head and then taking off saying, I fully assume my new form, and just, straight up lying to him. And that leads into a little bit of Return to New York where there's this weird moment where a Triceraton shows up, and it's something that, like, didn't need to have more background to it, but adding to it adds this cool little moment texture to the whole thing, adds all the universe, and adds something to Raphael's character for me, because, he's, cool but rude. He's usually, the outlandish, headstrong sort of guy, but quick on his feet, and this is something that we don't see too often, where he's quick on his feet and he's not engineering or doing anything, but it's one of those reasons why I think he's most people's favorite turtle, because, for, storytelling potential, this is just, a cool twist, being clever and dealing with in a way that was just really exciting. And it's a fun, weird comic that's technically one-off, but textures this classic chunk of comics. And it's really cool, and it's really weird that I have to feel privileged to read this. Something that bugs me is that I can see why they wouldn't necessarily put it in with collections now of the Return to New York thing, because don't get me wrong, I love Lawson and Talbot, I love the art, I love the story, but I mean, when you compare it to that, Golden Age Turtle stuff, it's not going to measure up. It doesn't... It's not quite on that level, but it's still really good. I think it would be cool if they added it as kind of a side or something, because this adds something. This adds something to the mythos and adds something to Raphael's character. It's really cool, and it's such a shame that this is just lost to the ages. So, I don't know, it's really cool for me. I got my Holy Grail, so maybe I'll have to take some time to reconsider what the next Holy Grail is, but I don't think there's ever going to be a book like this again for me where I will pine for it for so long and then feel still so glad to have it in my possession, in my collection. I'm not normally the collector kind of guy, but this is about owning a comic to read, not slabbing some old comic. But let me know what your guys' Holy Grail is, if you ever had a book that you got a hold of like that and just use that thing. It's the joy of this hobby, right? Like, come on, let me know, video response, whatever. Be curious to hear it. And I'm going to catch you guys soon with another review, and I mean that this time because I got some time and I got some reading I really want to do, so